Good morning, Steve. Special Friday video, June 20, 2014. Beautiful day here. Got to sit this morning, have a bit of coffee. I've had a 6-day juice fast, and then yesterday I was drinking protein powders and had the beginnings, a little salad and stuff in the evening for the first time in a week. So I dropped a few kilos, feel good about that. Feel cleaner. So what's going on? This morning I got to sit quietly drinking a little bit of coffee and watching birds circle and dive and swoosh and be in their joy, and sort of connected a little bit with that. And right now I'm having a lot of alone, peaceful, kind of quiet time, which is really good, and especially good after this juice fast. And I feel like, not just within me, but generally, something's changing. And I get that from several different separate sources as well out there in the world. I think that in my individual case, and I know I'm not the only one, so it's not like just me. I know that many people the last year have been cleaning, consciously and unconsciously, cleaning their stuff. I certainly have a lot. I feel like I know a lot more is coming, but and it seems to be calm for the moment, and then maybe it will stay calm. Probably another month of kind of more subtle shifting may be coming for me, but probably generally. And so, at least in this moment today, I'm in a really lovely, deep sense of peace and kind of a quiet inner joy. And it's not the kind of outward exuberance, like, woo! It's a much deeper kind of, probably more profound feeling. And again, it's a really quiet feeling. So I'm feeling grateful for that, and I'm hoping some other people also are having whatever their own version of the same thing is. So when I get to have this experience like this given to me, it's kind of a funny thing, because on one hand it's not a you do this and this and this and this is the result and like a linear kind of logical do. It's like, for whatever reason, some of it conscious choice, absolutely, and some of it the result of, I don't know how to say it, the energies that are going on around us, the pattern, my own personal kind of soul pattern, schedule, agenda, that's not, whatever the stuff is that it really influences me in this way, that's not a conscious part of my conscious linear decision-making process as the individual that I'm looking like, to this Steve. Because this Steve, I think I might have said once or twice, this Steve doesn't get the memo often that the bigger Steve, the plans that the bigger Steve has, and the plans that Source has, or the God has, or the whatever you want to call it has. And so, partly I make what I feel like is conscious decisions, and on some level it is, and at the same time, I keep on getting taken down this path. And there's I was thinking this morning in meditation, and there's this really funny trust going on. Trust in the path, trust in I'm being guided, whether I recognize it in the moment or not. And a really weird kind of paradoxical form of both surrender and making choices, but not controlling the outside. You know? And like a lot of the things that are really wonderful, I just don't understand. I don't understand it. Again, in this kind of human, linear, logical, left brain way. It's like the pattern for me has been, a lot of the time in my life I've struggled against things, I've decided things, I've decided certain values in my life, which this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And on one hand it was very clear, very true, that I want this and I don't want this. And it felt like in that moment and through years, this was a very clear, conscious choice. And it was. And at the same time, it was part of a plan. It feels like. And so I kind of go in and out of this surrender and then being active and not consciously creating and allowing and resisting and surrendering again, and it feels like my experience of some of it is like it goes up and then down, and you're in resistance, and I'm in resistance, and I'm in sadness or sorrow, and then I begin to surrender and I go up, and I go up a little higher this time, and then I'll go down, and then I'll go down farther, and then I'll go up higher, and so there's this roller coaster. But as I allow myself more often to surrender, without meaning I have to be in surrender every second, because sometimes I surrender, maybe what happens is when I think I'm making decisions, I'm also sometimes surrendering. Maybe sometimes, this doesn't make sense, this is really a paradox, this is really contradictory. Sometimes when I've made my most clear conscious decisions, sometimes out of conscious fear, sometimes out of unconscious fear, maybe I've also been surrendering in some way that really is kind of weird. And that leads me to the next level of surrender, and the next level of allowing the deep, quiet peace and joy to come in. That there is a kind of powerful, profound beauty in fear, in our fears. Rumi talks a little bit in some of his poetry about the longing and the sorrow and crying out, and the crying out of the dog, and that the man who is crying out Allah, 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 and the skeptic comes to him and he says, "Why do you keep on praying? Nothing's happening," And the man begins to take that in and accept that she's right. I pray and I cried out to Allah and I don't get an answer. And then I forget the rest of the details of the poem, but basically he gets the message, why have you stopped praying? Why have you stopped calling out to God, to Allah? And the man answers, well, because I don't get an answer. And the answer to that is, This didn't make sense to me, and just literally now as I'm talking, and maybe a little bit earlier this morning, I'm beginning to understand it a little bit more. The crying out is the answer. I know it doesn't make sense. And the surrendering is the answer. Surrendering to whatever the grief is, surrendering to the pain for whatever period of time, and letting go of trying to force it to change. Yes, do your meditation. Yes, do your belief work. Yes, do whatever your process is, of course. But on some level, sometimes for me, I can't speak for everyone else, but sometimes for me, the doors open to something different that I never would have imagined after I've stopped resisting and allowed things to be. Boy, it really is contradictory. All of it is, it's really hard to kind of grab onto, because it's not the way our minds work. It's not the way my mind thinks things have to work to be real. So it's the mystery. And it's both the resistance, and it's the surrender, and it's the fighting, and it's the trying to control, and it's all of it, and the surrender. It's not just, the only way is to surrender. Yes and no. Well, the only way to get to surrender is to be in resistance, at least for me. To think I'm in control. And sometimes I get the feedback I have been in control. And then moments later, or weeks later, or years later, I realize from another, now my perspective has gone from here to here. And what was true here isn't true anymore here, but it didn't make it less true when it was here. It's the mystery. It's the paradox. And all of it leads to the peace, for me. All of it leads to the love. All of it leads to coming into alignment with what's in my heart. To begin at the next level, to begin at the next opening, to even be aware of what's in my heart. This was in my heart. Some of you will recognize this. I use this when I teach. This was in my heart. And then I go through resistance. I resist the guidance, and I resist things, and I think I need to control. And then I have success. I use like that. I have success. And things do begin to work out. And then minutes or months or years later, I realize it was wrong, and I begin to understand here. I can see it from these different angles now. The same thing is in my heart. But because of the resistance, because of the attempt at control, because of trying to define, because of trying to decide, which are all part of the process. It's a bigger process. It's not just only surrender. To get to surrender, you have to be in control for a while. Maybe. Maybe not. Who the fuck knows? I don't know. I could be full of shit. But now it's like this. The same thing's in my heart. But now I realize it has these bits that I didn't recognize what it was before, that I didn't even acknowledge existed. All I acknowledged existed was this part. And now there's this part, and this part. And imagine what's going to happen when I go, and I look at it from this view. And when I get taken to the place, the possibility of having that as the next, as one of the expansions of my perspective and acceptance. And based on my experience in life so far, I will probably go back into resistance against something, or I will probably decide that I know how things are now. Well, I didn't know the truth before, but now I see. And in this moment of I see, it is true. And in this moment of I see, I slip back into resistance, which will make it not completely true. and eventually I will need to surrender. No. I will find myself going into surrender. And the expansion comes, and the expansion in the heart, and the allowance of peace, and the allowance more of just this moment. Even though the circumstances around this moment, according to what my brain thinks it wants and needs to be for me to be happy, aren't always in place, or aren't at all in place. But still there can be this moment. And I go back into the cycle, which includes stuff like meditation, includes stuff like working on things, includes stuff like the fast, the 6-day fast, includes stuff like trying to impose my reality instead of impose on my reality what I want, and then allowing the reality to reflect that back, and maybe resisting, and then going into the paradox of, because of the imposition, because of the trying to be in control, I get to surrender again. My surrender recently is not the same surrender as it would have been 6 months ago, and a year ago, and 10 years ago. But it's surrender. I don't know. It's all the mystery. Thank fucking God for the mystery. Happy Venus Day.